when I got down there, I was again blessed, because I got down to Miami and I got down to a town where there was hardly any Narcotics Anonymous. There was 2 meetings when I got there. And all along, all this whole time in Ohio, I had been going to meetings, and that was what my life was all about, trying to do the right things. I got down to Miami, and I was just really fortunate, because I got involved in the early days of the fellowship, where if you walked into the room, you had to serve. They're just, I tell you something, the size of the fellowship today, I don't know if I could make it today coming into the program, because I know what I'm about to talk to now is what really saved my life, which was service and learning to help and love other people. All right. And I didn't want to help and love anybody, and I didn't want to do anything. I just happened to walk into an NA meeting that had 5 people, and they had been making coffee for like a long time, They'd been passing that coffee powder around 5 people for quite a while, and like they saw me come in there and they said, we'll get this guy. But they got me. They gave me the coffee pot. They gave me the keys to the room. They gave me, the responsibility. These people, they loved and they trusted and they believed in me when I had absolutely no belief or trust in myself. I couldn't understand it. But they loved me enough and they trusted me enough. And it was something that started to make me feel good. And that's what we need to do. If we don't learn how to feel good about ourselves, it's not about drugs. It isn't. I tell you, I've come a long way in my own thinking in the last few years. When I got here, all I could see was a chemical problem. If you didn't shoot heroin and you didn't do the things I didn't listen to you. Okay? And I know that most of us do that. That's the way it was in the beginning. I didn't hear you. I didn't hear anything that you said. Okay? But after a while, I'd start to listen and I'd start to get to know people. And I found out that our common bond here, guys and ladies, is not the drugs. Our common bond of everyone in this room is the pain. The lady that can't take care of her son or her daughter because she's smoking grass and she can't keep it together and she can't be a mother feels just as lousy and hates herself just as much as the junkie that can't do it either. Okay? And that's what we feel. We're people that never looked in the mirror. I never looked at anybody eye to eye. Bob said last night that he looked people right in the eye. God bless him. I never looked anybody in the eye. Okay? I couldn't, because I hated myself. All right? And that's why we're fortunate, because we have a program that teaches us, if we work it, how to love ourselves and how to like ourselves and how to replace all the hate and negativity with good stuff. That's what happened to me. I didn't go about looking to do it that way. I can look back in retrospect and tell you that that's the way that it happened, because I got drawn into this fellowship, I got drawn into the service, and I started to feel good. And in time, not only, they got tired of my coffee. They said, maybe you'll make a better GSR. And then they got tired of me in the area, and they said, we need a hotline chairman. Maybe you'll do the hotline chairman. And then we had the World Convention come down, and I got involved in the convention committee like you guys. And I did all these things. And my life was Narcotics Anonymous. All right? That's what it was. And time went by. I started to feel good about myself. I started to like myself. I had this job. I was working for this guy that I told you about that got me down there. I was living day to day. I had started to correspond with my daughter and my ex-wife. Started to talk to them on the phone. I started to write them letters. And I remember for a long time, when my daughter talked to me, she called me Philip. She didn't call me Daddy. And it hurt. And I remember even talking to her mother once, and I told her how much it hurt and how I was feeling, and she said, don't worry, it'll come around. It'll come around. And that day came. One day, out of nowhere, she just called me Daddy. And, it was great. It was great. And, then a bad thing happened. My ex-wife hit me. She hit me with something hard and difficult, very difficult for me, She told me one day, she says, you're doing a good job. You're establishing this relationship, and you're calling, and you're doing all these things, which it's great. But she says, don't you think it's about time you start sending money home? She says, that's what fathers do, They just don't write letters and talk on the phone, There's a little responsibility that goes with that, and that hurt. I didn't want to hear that. I still don't like to take care of money amends, but maybe I'm like Dennis. I don't know. Anyway, I had a hard time dealing with that because I knew that I owed a lot of money, and I thought that I had to have about $2 million to send home one day in a big bucket that would take care of everything, I was living day to day. I was hardly paying my own bills at that time, and I didn't understand how to do that. But I went to somebody that did understand, and I talked to them, and they told me that I'm so stupid because they told me it has nothing to do with money, that you don't have to send 2 zillion home a week. Told me send something and do it regularly. All right. I didn't understand that. I still have a hard time sometimes understanding it, but it works that way. And that's what I started doing. I started sending some money home regularly. And things progressed, and they progressed. And 2.5 years progressed, and it happened to me. I had the lightning bolts. The lightning bolts that some of us get sometimes happen. And it happened at a time when I was down there in Miami, and I was just sitting in some shit. I don't remember exactly what was going on. I wasn't in the best of moods. And I got the phone call from my ex-wife, and she called me up and she said, you've proven yourself. We respect you. We've got faith in you, And she says, how would you like Melissa to come down and spend Christmas with you? She was going to let my daughter come down on a plane all by herself, come 1,500 miles down, and stay with her junkie father down there in Florida alone. And when that happened, all I did was flash back to that day in that halfway house, to that scene. I thought back, and I remembered how it went down. And I remembered how I knew that it could never happen. And I thought about all that I had to do, and all the waiting and everything that I had to do, and it happened. It was promised to me, it was told to me, and it happened. The bells went off. I then knew, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there's a God up there. And in fact, up until that time, when I talked about God or higher power in these rooms, I couldn't say God. I was 2.5 years clean at the time. And believe me, I believed. I had a pretty good belief system. I prayed regularly. But when we talked in rooms, and when we talked about that subject, I couldn't say God. I'd say higher power, power greater than myself. The words would stumble. From that day on, I never had a problem saying God again. And, right around the same time, I had something happen. I went through that period in my life where here I was clean. My life was the program. Okay. But I was struggling. I wasn't making any money. All right. And it started to bother me. And I started to wonder, what's God's will for me? Am I supposed to be broke? Am I supposed to never have anything? Am I going to have to live that way? And then I even said, I'll do it if I have to. Just let me know. And then I started thinking, like, as long as I'm going to struggle and as long as I'm not going to really make money, maybe I could do something a little bit, maybe better. And I started thinking about going to work in treatment. I'd been involved in hospitals and institutional work, and I thought about maybe going to work in treatment. They don't make any money, but at least it may be, if I'm not going to make money, maybe I could do something that I'd feel good doing and being of service. And all these things were happening, And I come home, and I'm just really, I'm in that state right there where I just don't know what to do. Money has really kind of loomed in on me, and it was becoming a very important issue to me about what I was going to do in my life. And I had been living with, I told you that my friend hooked me up with a guy down there, that the guy that I was living with wasn't in the program. Okay. The guy that I'd been living with was a young guy that I worked with, and he was a pretty responsible, good guy, but he was a social user. He got high, and that was his life. And we had our own lives, but we were living together, and it was working out. I would never suggest that to anybody, believe me, but it was working out. But I'm in this period of time. I come home from work one day. We got a 3-bedroom house with a screened-in swimming pool. Things were pretty good, but he owned everything. I was just paying half the rent. I owned nothing. I come home from work this one day, and there's 600 pounds of grass sitting on my pool deck. 600 pounds of grass on my pool deck. Now what had happened was a friend of his who was a smuggler, all right, his stash got dropped into the Everglades, and it needed a place to dry out, and he had talked my roommate into letting us use our house, all right. Never talked to me, talked to my roommate, But I come home, I walk in, I see all this stuff out there, and my mind just started going a zillion miles an hour, like all I could see were the police coming, the narcs, the whole squad. I could see me getting busted. I'm 2.5 years clean, really clean, really all that, and here, I could see them walking in and me telling them that story. Yeah, sure. I could see them getting my police reports out and everything, and yeah, sure, you're clean. Mm-hmm. And I saw all this, and I saw how that if they walked in, I was going to go to jail and I was going to get in a serious jackpot. Even though I was an innocent victim of all this kind of stuff, I was going to pay the price. So my mind started going to work, hey, as long as you're going to pay the price, maybe you should get something for this. And I went for it, and I talked to this guy because I knew him, and I even sold myself cheap. I said to this guy, give me $2,000. I want it right now, because I know what's going on here. My roommate's a little idiot, but you and I both know what happens if the police walk in. You're just a visitor, and I'm the one going to jail. So I said, I want the money, and I want it now. Don't even tell me later. Okay, and he said, okay. And he prepared to go home and get the money and bring it back to me, and I was walking around the house, and I just, I was a lunatic. My mind was going at that. I needed the money desperately. Okay, I needed it. Here it was, perfect opportunity. But there was that other voice saying, "This is drug money. You're not about that today. You can't take that. That's no good for you. And I went back and forth, and I went in the room. I think I threw a few prayers in, And I went up to this guy before he left and I said, listen, I don't want the money. Get the stuff and get out. That's all I want. And I ran out of the house. You know, never in my entire life had I ever stood on a principle of any kind in my life. But I just knew that I had to do this. I never had an opportunity in the street present itself to me like that, ever, you know? But I stood on this principle as desperately as I needed that money and as bad as I needed it. I stood on it, and I did. And I threw him out. God never lets us down. 2 weeks, within 2 weeks after that happened, there was a shake-up at my company. Okay? Some things happened, and the top job of the company opened up for me. Okay? Since that day, money's never been a problem for me. In fact, I can make as much money as I want. The only problem that I have is me and my ambition and how hard I'm willing to work for it. But the position opened up, and I know that's why it happened, you know, because I did what I had to do. See, these are things that when they happen to you, you can't deny that there's a God out there. You know, I mean, how can you? You can't do it. It's impossible, even for people in denial and thick people like some of the guys in this room, you know, and some of the girls too, you know. But you know, like a lot had happened in my life. I had become. There's a lot of things that happened, and God, I'd love to talk about all of them, but I just can't, you know. What's important is that when evidence of God being out there became known to me, and as I changed my life and as values and things changed to me, you know, like, I didn't know that it felt good to be responsible. All right, I ran from responsibility all my life. All right, I didn't know that it felt good to be responsible. I didn't know that it could feel good to pay a bill. I never thought that I could own anything. When I got here, you talk about the hope. Start to live was the theme of your convention. I never thought I could start to live because I thought that it would be impossible that I would ever own anything. In fact, I used to even say, maybe I'll get clean. Maybe I can beat this thing and maybe this compulsion to use can leave me. But I will never own a thing in my life. I'll never have credit. I'll never have a car. I'll never have this. I'll never have that. I was so sure of it. Like Bob said last night, that's a lie. You know, that's the lie that my mind was always out to use me. Because by getting involved through good people in the program, trust, responsibility, those kinds of things became important to me. And they became important to me outside of this program also. All right? We're supposed to carry that stuff in all of our affairs. We're not just supposed to carry it around in these rooms. We're supposed to take it everywhere we go. Whether it be to the employer, okay, or whether it be wherever we go, we're supposed to live. Okay, it's supposed to cross all barriers. God bless us, it's even supposed to cross all fellowships. You know, it's a way to live. Okay, it's about love and caring and understanding and all these kinds of things that happen to us. It happened to me. You know, I have a gold American Express card. I have a car in 4 months in February. I bought an 83 Cougar. In 4 months, I'm going to own it. 48 straight payments. Okay? I've been at the same job for 6.5 years. You know? Do you think American Express would give me a card if they knew what I was? I get letters from them that says you're a valued accountant, like a young executive, okay? But you know what? They don't know me by name, and they don't know me by number. Well, they do know me by number, I guess, okay? But they don't know me by what I'm doing here. You know the funny thing? American Express knows me. I'm a productive member of society. It's just not supposed to be. It's just not supposed to be. This is not supposed to be me up here. These things weren't supposed to happen to me. I want to tell you about a couple of things that happened to me in this past year. Well, actually, I guess it started about a year ago. Last June, one of my ex-wife called me up, and she was sick. She had cancer, and they didn't know what was going to happen. And I came up here to be with her, okay, through the surgery. I came up here, and I just knew that everything was going to be okay. It was the strangest thing, wow. I would take the dot. I've been listening to it for years. The dot probably on tape before I ever knew her. Okay? I used to listen to the tape all the time before I ever met her. I met her, a couple of years after. After I had listened to her tape. But I was from the same situation that she talked about one time. Because I was up there, and I found myself, praying, what am I going to do? In spite of everything that I do, in spite of me, I got down on my knees and I said, God, thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for letting me be clean. Thank you for allowing me to be able to be relied on. And thank you for allowing this to happen to me. And I pray that you help all of us, the family and all the members, and Marcy, help you. I pray that you help us accept whatever is going to come down. Okay? I heard Dot talk about that one time. And I said, that's impossible. Because I wanted to pray for complete health, that's what I wanted to pray for. And in spite of me, I didn't do that. And it all worked out. I got home. When I got back into Miami, I found out that one of my closest friends, who was in this program, who I knew for a few years while he bounced around, and he was coming up, he just had his 2-year anniversary. He was clean for 2 years. This guy was a hope to die New York junkie. He came in just like me, and he put his life together. He became a successful person. He got a good business. He got a relationship with his son. He got everything. And he also got the news that he had AIDS. And one of the consequences of the addiction, he carried it in with him. That long incubation period. He carried it in with him, and it didn't show up until this particular point. He was one of my closest friends, and I lived with him for the next year. And I watched the ugliest thing on the face of this earth happen to somebody that I loved. I watched him totally fall apart. He went from a strong, loving person. He just fell apart. But you know what? When he first got the news, he was depressed, he was down. But he had the program. He had the program in him, and he decided that he was going to help people. And he got involved in AIDS support groups, and he got involved in carrying the message. He got involved in all these things. I have never met anybody in my life that carried the message that my friend Lloyd carried for the next year. I hated God. I couldn't understand it. It's not good for me to hate God. I watched him fall apart, but I also watched how, I used to get down on my knees, and as much as I hated God, the harder that I hated him, the harder I prayed to him. The more I wanted answers, and the answers came. The answers came to me because I saw how one guy can affect so many people. Okay? Anyone that came into a meeting and saw Lloyd, no matter what shit they were in during the day, it all left. All right? It was like a walking gratitude list. It was like just having somebody at the door. Every person that walked in made you take an honest look at yourself and what was bothering you for that day. So I watched him and his sickness and his what he had to deal with help other people. And I watched him die. I gave him his 3-year chip. And he gave it back to me. That's what I have in my hand. It's been a symbol of strength. And I know he's here right now. His funeral was the funeral director. See if you can believe this, right? The funeral director is in the program. We had the funeral. We had a meeting in the chapel right after the funeral. All right. I'd never seen anything like that. Okay. But that's the way it works. And we're all here for a reason. We're all here for a purpose. We're all here to help each other. And it all can be said in a poem that I heard and some of you have heard before. It's about an old violin. See, this violin, it was battered and scarred. And the auctioneer thought that it was barely worth his while to waste his time on the old violin, but he held it up with a smile. Now what am I bidding, my good folks, he cried, and who'll start the bidding for me? $1, $1, and who'll make it $2? $2, and who'll make it $3? $3 once, $3 twice, and going for $3. But wait, from the room far back, an old gray-haired man came forward, and he picked up the bow. And wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening the loose strings, he played out a melody that was pure and sweet as any of God's angels could sing. Then the music ceased, and the auctioneer said in a voice quiet and low, "Now who'll start bidding for the old violin?" And he held it up with the bow. $1,000, and who'll make it $2? $2,000, and who'll make it $3? $3,000 once, $3,000 twice, and going and gone, said he. The people cheered, but many of them cried. They couldn't quite understand what changed its worth. And somebody replied, it was the touch of the Master's hand. And many a man, with his life out of tune, he's battered and tattered with sin. He's auctioned cheap to the thoughtless crowd, just like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game, and he travels on. He's going once, he's going twice, he's going and almost gone. But the Master comes, and the foolish crowd can never quite understand the worth of one soul and the change it's brought by the touch of the Master's hand. We're all here tonight. Just look around. We shouldn't be here. We all have a purpose. And I'm going to tell you something, if you don't know it yet. We're the chosen people. You may find it hard to believe, but God gave us all a gift. And I'll tell you something about that gift. He didn't give it to the doctors, and He didn't give it to the learned people and His best professors, and He didn't give it to the nurses, and He didn't give it to the psychiatrists. He didn't give this powerful gift to any of these people. He took us. He took us, the drug addicts. He took us, the scum of society, the outcasts. He took all of us, and He gave us His one special gift. He gave us the ability to be able to reach down into the heart and the gut of a sick and a suffering person and to help heal their soul. And that is a gift. And when you work it in your life, amazing things happen. There's a hospital on the hill in Bloomfield. Some of you know the hospital, St. Francis Hospital. I had a private room there. I was in that place almost 30 times over the years. I was in that hospital many, many times over the years, and I went in different seasons. Months would change, seasons would change, years would change. I would go into that hospital, and I'd have to go to meetings in that hospital, and every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock there was a meeting in that hospital. And there was this one certain guy named Henry, this old guy with a white beard. And Henry used to be there every Wednesday night at that meeting in that hospital. Now, you know, I was in the fog. This was in my fog years. You know, a lot of things I didn't remember the literature that they told me to read, and I didn't remember any of the stuff that they told me. But one thing did make an impression on me. Every time I went into that hospital, it didn't matter what year or what season it was, on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, Henry would be there in a meeting. I talked to Henry one day, and he pulled me aside and he said, you know, he said, I was a hardhead too. And he said that it took him 10 years to get it. He said he bounced around for 10 years. And he said it took him that long to get it. But he looked at me and he says, you know something? I believe in you. And I feel that you're going to get it. And the people like us, he even included me with him, you know? He said the people like us, when we get it, we give it away the most. He said 12-step work becomes our lives. And we do these hospitals. And we do this because we know we have to. He had no business saying that to me. And I can't tell you that I got clean the next day or the next week or even the next year. But I'm going to tell you something. I've been involved in hospitals and institution work. I've been involved in a lot of things. I've been involved with that the whole time I'm clean. And about 4 years ago, this little place down in Miami, this little detox, the only detox down in Miami that will take you and detox you off of any drug with or without insurance or money, right, approached our H&I committee and asked us to bring a meeting in there. And by the grace of God, or however it's supposed to be, I started taking that meeting in there. I've been taking that meeting in there basically now for a little over 5 years. That says a lot, you know. That says a lot, but there's a little bit more to it. Would anybody like to know what day that meeting meets on? Care to guess the time? Wednesday, 7 o'clock. That's where I've been. Just like Henry. Wednesday, 7 o'clock, St. Francis. The master scriptwriter, nobody could put that one together. Nobody. So what I want to say to you in closing is a couple things. If you're in this room and you are not experiencing the kinds of things that I'm talking about up here, if you don't have these kind of warm feelings, And if you've been even clean for quite a bit of years or time, and you don't feel this way, I'd just like you to do one thing when you go home tonight. I'd like you to take a look in the mirror, and I'd like you to ask yourself, what have you been doing to give it back? Take an honest look, all right, and ask yourself, what have you been doing to give it back? You know, have you been passing it on? Or have you been, just like the way I like to describe it, have you been taking the money and running with it? You know, because your life's been given back to you, all right, and you don't think it's important to help anybody again. You know, so ask yourself that question. You know, the program is just like sex. You know, if you've been around a while and you're doing it and you don't feel good, you're not doing it right. You know? It's all about love. That's what it's all about, guys, ladies. There's all kinds of loves out in that world, you know. There's a love of a fair young maid. There's a love of a strong young man. There's a love of a baby, unafraid. These have all existed since time began. And then there's the love of all loves. It's greater than that of even the mother. And it's the tender, the infinite, the unconditional love. Everybody just look around. From one drug addict to another. I love you and thank you.